Early in our marriage, my husband sunk into a very dark place. He hadn't been sober very long, and he was struggling with remaining sober and the view of life that sobriety gave him without the cushion of alcohol. And he sunk into this deep, dark place. And I was fearful. I was fearful for him. I was fearful for our marriage. And I was frustrated because there was nothing I could do to help. And in the midst of all of that, one afternoon, I came home from work and found him sitting on the back porch, talking to a child, a little boy that I'd never seen before. And as curious as I was, I had the impression that I didn't want to interrupt them. And so I smiled and waved, and I went on in the house. Sometime later, Dale came in through the back door, and when I turned to look at him, I saw light coming from his eyes. I saw a look of joy on his face that I had not seen in a very long time. And he said that conversation just changed my life. And the first question I had was, who was that little boy? I'd never seen him before. I was familiar with most of the kids in the neighborhood, and I knew this wasn't one of them. So I wanted to know, who was that? And he looked at me and he said, I think it was Jesus. Well, I'm pretty sure it was Jesus. Because one of the things I know about Jesus is that Jesus finds unexpected ways to show up. And he comes to us not only in unexpected ways, but at moments that we least expect it, in ways that we least expect, and touches us in ways we can't even imagine. And that element of surprise is probably one of the reasons I love the Bible story assigned for today, this Sunday, so much. It's found in the 24th chapter of Luke, and it takes place on Easter afternoon. Two of the disciples had left Jerusalem early that afternoon and were walking on the road towards Emmaus. Now, this wasn't two of the original 12 disciples, because remember, by the time of Jesus' death, he had gathered hundreds of disciples. And these two in this story are two of the later ones. And they're walking on the road and they're talking about everything that's been going on. And a stranger joins them. And this stranger asks, what are you talking about? And they stop and they look at him like he's from Mars. And they said, are you kidding? You don't know what's going on? You haven't heard about Jesus and everything that's happened? And so they tell him. They tell him about this guy named Jesus and how they had hoped that he was the Messiah and the one who was coming to save them, but how he had died and now his tomb was empty and they don't know what it all means. Later that afternoon, as evening approaches, they reach their destination. And as the two disciples break off to go to the home that they're going to stay at, the stranger keeps walking, and they call him back, and they invite him to stay with them because it's late. And so he joins them for dinner, and in the midst of dinner, he takes bread, he gives thanks, and he breaks it. And in that moment, they realize that it's Jesus. And no sooner do they realize it's Jesus than he disappears. And they rush back to Jerusalem to tell everybody about what had just happened. and how they had just seen and spent the entire afternoon walking and talking with Jesus. Jesus does show up. At times, in unexpected ways, unexpected times, unexpected places, through unexpected people, and we don't often recognize him at first. For example, I want you to think of a time when you got a phone call from someone who said, you know, I've been thinking about you. How are you? And it was a phone call you really needed. Or a time when you went to the mailbox and there was a card or a letter that you really needed. Or you were having a bad day and someone in line ahead of you at McDonald's drive-thru paid for your meal. Or a child brought you a dandelion and gave you a hug. None of those were haphazard events. They were Jesus showing up in unexpected ways, just when you needed him the most. You see, we are all Christ bearers. We have the light of Christ within us. And we are called to carry that light to others, to bear Christ, to carry Christ, to be his hands, his feet, and his mouth here on earth for those who need him. And before you think for 1 minute that you aren't qualified or that you're not called to do that, let me tell you about something that Jesus said later Easter night when he showed up to all of the disciples and he was discussing with them the things that happened that day. He made the comment, "You are witnesses." And that comment stands today. He says it to us, to you and to I. You are witnesses. We aren't perfect people. We all are very aware of our faults, our failings, and the things that make us unworthy to bear Christ to anybody. But did you notice what he said? Actually, did you notice what he didn't say? He didn't say, once you get your life together, once you get your act together and become worthy, you will be a witness. He didn't say, once you stop doing X, Y, or Z, you will be a witness. Or once you start doing A, B, and C, which you should be doing, there's that should again, you will be a witness. He didn't say any of that. He said you are a witness. You are. You have been given the light of Christ, and you have been asked by him to go let it shine. I can't think of a time in my life, or probably yours, that has needed more light shined into it than the time we're living in now. I almost can't say that without getting choked up, because we all know people who are struggling. Who are struggling being cooped up at home. They want to work. They want to provide for their family, but they can't. At home, because as much as they love their spouse or their children, the stress of this entire situation and the mood that everybody is in because of it has made being cooped up at home, unable to do the things everybody's missing doing, has made that a struggle, and they need some light. We all know people who can't stay home and kind of wish they could because they're essential workers and they have to go out every day, and they're fearful and anxious. We all know people who can't do their jobs the way they're used to doing them and need to do them in a new way, and it's frustrating. We all know people who are missing family and friends. Or where we used to be, mentally or emotionally. We are all suffering the impacts of stress and anxiety and loneliness, separation, uncertainty. And so I want to propose that there's a silver lining in all of this. You see, we live a lot of our lives on autopilot. And we can't do that right now. And while that's frustrating, I want to propose that it also brings us some unique opportunities. Unique opportunities to be the hands, the feet, and the light of Christ in ways we've never contemplated before. And I also want to propose that in the process of letting our light shine into the lives of others, bringing them with a concerted and conscious effort to bring them the hope and the joy of Jesus Christ, that in that process, the light and the hope emits from us in a way that lights up not only their life but our own. Ever mailed a card before? Maybe now's the time to try it. Has it been years since you wrote somebody a letter? Maybe now's the time to give it a shot. Maybe now's the time for us to be the one to pay for somebody else's meal in the car behind us in McDonald's. What new ways? What new opportunities do we have to show people that we love them, that we're with them, and that they're going to make it through this? What new opportunities do we have? I bet there are a lot. And so what I want you to know is that you have been called and empowered and given this incredible amount of joy and light. The light and joy of Jesus Christ is within you. Let it break free. Let it shine. And go light someone else's darkness. Because, my friends, you are needed now more than ever. Amen.